And that's one of our biggest initiatives right now that we're working with. I'm very happy to be involved in something that will change the industry because we've been fairly stagnant. Safety seems to have plateaued, and we have to have something else to grab onto.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zhao. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Canary Report, podcast for risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zhao, the CEO and founder of Yellowbird. Today, we have joining us Christopher Diaz from Balfour Beatty, Vice President of Safety, Health, and Environment for the Southeast. Chris is an amazing individual. I've had the pleasure of speaking with him in advance of this conversation. Why you want to listen to him? Well, he has a wealth of knowledge. He works for Balfour for quite some time. He's also been involved in things like diversity environments, changing environments, high-risk environments. And if you're unfamiliar with Balfour, basically what they are the general contractor, an at-risk construction management firm, and a design services company for private sector across the United States. Chris's background is everywhere from large scale to small scale. He's worked everywhere from bridges in Africa to working on compliance and regulations. He has a zero harm philosophy, and we will talk about that. He's a champion of safety, and he's just a great individual. And so thank you so much, Chris, for joining us, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm very happy and excited to be here today.
So my first thing that we always start with, and I think you probably recognize this from our conversations, is safety is a human business. And I believe that in order to have a great podcast, in order to have a great team, in order to do what we do for a living, it's about people. And despite the GPT and all the other large language modeling world that we live in, human beings build things, human beings create things, and human beings come home to their families and do things for others. And so I want to learn about you as a human being. And so tell me a little bit about yourself, your family, your upbringing, whatever you'd like to share with us. I'd love to hear about you as a person, Chris.
I was born in Richmond, Virginia, so I've kind of been in the southeastern part of the United States. I had a great childhood growing up. My parents, my in-laws, my wife are very influential in my life. I'm getting ready to celebrate my 40th wedding anniversary here this month on the 18th. And very special time for me at this point. I've been doing large scale construction for about 40 years. Started as a builder. So I was able to utilize a lot of my building skills, through being a superintendent and a scheduler and all the different facets of the business. So when I got into safety, probably about 25 years ago, it really gave me the full, wealth and depth of construction to help me understand how a project is put together so I can look at safety a little bit differently.
First of all, 40 years. Congratulations, man. I've been married for 25 years this year, so we're both hitting momentous, points, but you do not look old enough to be married 40 years. You must have gotten married very, very young. Like, were you 6 or 7, something like that? Maybe a little bit older than that. But you said that you've been in construction for 40 years. Was your family in the construction world, or did you just get into that based on your own?
My grandfather, who basically came to the United States from Panama, he was a builder. And, I didn't have the fortune of working alongside him, but it's been in the family. And my father, he was basically an electrician. He worked for a company called Western Electric, which is now come into AT&T. And I got a lot of my background through my grandfather and my parent. And, when I was in college, it paid the bills. So, and it's paid the bills very well, and something I've enjoyed. I wake up every morning loving what I do. So,
That's fantastic. And you said college. Where did you go to school?
Farmville, Virginia, called Longwood College.
That's fantastic. And did you stay around your home, or did you stay at home at the time?
No, I wanted to get away from home as quick as I could.
Interestingly enough, my son, who's a 21-year-old, and he's studying architecture very close to home, but he was on campus. He goes to Arizona State, but it's only 25 minutes from the house. But he had the same philosophy, and candidly, we had the same philosophy. I said, "You're going away to school." When I said that to him, I also said, "We're going to make sure you know you're going away to school because you're not taking your car." And he goes, "What?" He said, and I said, "First year, you don't get your car. You just got to stay in the garage." And because I wanted him to go away, and it sounds like you stayed relatively close to home, but you did go away, quote unquote, and that's great. That's great. So what kind of construction were you working when you were in college and then beyond? You did first 15 years of your career in actual doing the trade. So what were you doing?
The first 15 years, I actually started, almost as low as you could possibly go. I was pulling nails out of fire retardant lumber because it was so expensive. We saved everything we could. But I transferred from that to project management to supervision, and I worked on a lot of heavy duty industrial, mobile refinery, large scale, companies that were up and around Richmond, which pretty large businesses up in that area. So I really got my teeth into it during the first 15 years of experience in so many different varieties of work, pharmaceutical, industrial, and you name it.
I actually used to do a lot of business in Richmond area because I was in telecommunications, and Richmond was one of the core telecommunications interface areas, exchanges in the 90s. First boom of data centers, which is now the second boom of data centers that's going on right now. But the first boom of data centers were very much there's a lot in Tyson's Corner and Richmond, Virginia area, and all that good stuff. So it's a great segue into tell us about your company and a little bit of history as much as I'm not asking for a book report, but I would love to hear about where you guys come from, what you do, what your beliefs are, your vision, anything you'd like to share about the company itself.
Yeah, well, Balfour Beatty is a global contractor originating in the UK with offices throughout the U.S. Starting in the D.C., the Carolinas, Southeast, Texas, California, Oregon, and Washington. And we have a philosophy. It's not a slogan, but for the past 15 years, we've lived, breathed, and sleep what we call zero harm. And zero harm is we do not compromise when it comes to safety. We believe that our workers, the public, our people, and the environment, that we leave no trace and no harm comes to any of those workers. And it takes a lot of support from everyone in the company, and everyone owns safety, right? They're responsible, they're accountable for their actions. And zero harm really provides that pathway for us to be creative in what we do. And it's just it's been a way of life for me for the past 15 years.
I love the philosophy or the statement of zero harm because it's more than just people. Harm is done everything's people, of course, but at the end of the day, harm, and as a word, are you leaving the community better than you found it? Are you not creating, you might be building something, but you might be destroying as you're creating. And it sounds to me like your company has a great philosophy around that, which is really special. And I'm really impressed by that. So one of the things when we were doing our pre-meeting, you talked about was the bridge project in Africa, and some of the things that the company does to give back to communities, both in the U.S. but well beyond the U.S. Tell me a little bit about that project. I'd love to hear it, and when you do talk about it, I'd also like to hear kind of the not just safety, but what you learned in that process of being in an environment like going to Africa it's not the same as a safe environment building in the US and Canada and around the world in more modern technology, modern societies. So what can you tell us about that project?
Balfour Beatty participates with a organization called Bridges to Prosperity. And we're very fortunate that we're able to send 10 to 12 individuals across the company, in their case, to Rwanda in Africa to build footbridges, pedestrian bridges that cross what would seem to us as very simple little rivers or creeks, but what happens is during the rainy seasons, these small little creeks or tributaries become raging torrents and rivers that cut off access for the local communities for school, for shopping, for work, for medicine. It just in the individuals that live in these communities are required to travel great distances, to get a place where they can safely pass. So that safe passage and the safety that I pursue every day was really strong for me, and I felt that it was something I really wanted to do to support the community. Obviously, it was a bucket list for me too to go to Africa, but I really did not realize how it would impact me to go over and work hand in hand with the locals, specifically because we weren't really able to communicate. I had a few months to try to learn some of their language, but what I ended up finding out that safety is universal. It's culturally different, but it's universal, and our expressions and our way of showing enabled the community to really take a hold and grasp safety in a different way. And they were very eager to work with us. The technology that we brought was, unlike anything that they had, really experienced. So when you give a worker, a harness, they cherish it. It's not like, I just go down the street and get another one. They learn to wear it. And, I just absolutely loved every bit of that. The leadership part along that went with it is, I find that when I travel to different countries, same way with Africa, I come back thinking I didn't know it all. I've really learned a lot because necessity, it creates innovation. And when you travel to different countries and you find out that the means that people have, although they aren't the same as we have, they find ways to protect themselves and protect others. And that's what I bring back is that it doesn't take a lot. There's probably things on the job site we already have.
That's a beautiful statement that you're making there. And it's really, I think at the end of the day, what we do for a living is not about compliance. It's about making sure that people are safe. And everybody says, well, and not getting political because I don't make this into a political show, but heaven forbid that there were a situation where OSHA does cut to the gone. Let's just say it was gone. People will still find a way, I hope, and I believe, to keep their employees safe, to keep the community safe, because we don't just do it because it's legal. We do it because it's the right thing to do. And employees won't stay if they don't feel safe, first and foremost. You can't keep talent. You cannot keep talent if they don't feel that you care for them and that they're protected. One too many close calls, they're going to go find another job. Plain and simple, to somebody who cares for them. And so, like I always say, at the end of the day, this is not about being compliant or in legal. Yes, we have to. There are requirements, but that should not be the driver. So along those lines, it's interesting you should bring this up on the language side. I spend a fair amount of our resources. We have about 7,000 people now at Yelbert and growing quite rapidly. We do a lot of multi-language training. And it's surprising, like if you're going to do a training or a survey, or you're going to go out to a site that has a lot of blue collar workers or things to that effect. I mean, obviously, you're going to have a fair amount of Spanish, you're going to have a fair amount of English, but you're also going to have European languages. You're going to have people who have Arabic languages. You're going to have various things, and it's amazing how how many words don't translate. And even when you use a GPT or some other, there are, even the word safety in Spanish or Portuguese is not just safety, it's also security. So if you take every time we say safety and you change it to security, which some of these folks think that we are actually security consultants or security people, it's like, well, that's not actually, but there is no direct language conversion. And it's interesting because we actually have been doing more of that kind of work where it's like, I want to make sure that my people are understanding the words, not just doing the translation or having somebody go on an online training. Because at the end of the day, you really want to have a human being be able to speak their language, truly speak their language, not just philosophically speak their language, but actually the language of verbalization. And then there's also the challenge that we all have. And I was going to ask, there's a question I promise associated with this, which is, do you deal with a lot of literacy challenges in your environments, both here domestically in the US, and what is your purview? Are you over, I think you're southeast, correct? Or just the eastern?
I'm just the southeast, so basically Georgia and Florida, some South Carolina.
How many projects do you have actively working in those? And I want to get back to my question, but how many projects do you have actively working in?
20 to 30 active projects right now.
It's a lot of moving parts. How long are your projects on average, like scale wise? You guys do pretty big projects, right?
3 years. Others, could last 3 months. It all depends. We have a wide variety of projects, special projects that we deal with, as well as large scale projects. And yeah, and they're all difficult. They're all as tough, and you know they're all demanding.
Have you had challenges with language and literacy? Is that one of the things that you, as an organization, when you're managing teams and making sure everybody's educated on their safety programs, and has that ever been a challenge for you guys internally?
The language barriers are always going to have their challenges, and we do have specialized challenges we're very fortunate in the Southeast and other parts of the U.S. where a lot of our team members are bilingual or multilingual, and we set up programs to help educate and train our workforce. The one thing that is probably more true than not is an individual might tell us that they know what they're doing, but in fact, that's not really true. And they're depending upon the location. We have to be very careful of that. Years ago, I started a Spanish safety committee where we basically want the individuals to have a place where they could, speak amongst peers, let us know what challenges they were facing out in the workforce, and see if there was a way that we could, provide a resource or some training to help overcome those things. And I was able successfully for about 7 years to continue along with that, training hundreds and hundreds of people. So, but yeah, the language barriers, whether it's Portuguese, Spanish, Creole, it's out there.
I used to do a lot of business in South Louisiana, and it's the only time in my life that somebody was speaking English to me and I didn't understand what they were saying. I genuinely was trying to communicate, and I have huge respect for these folks, and they are very intelligent, but just it can be really hard to, if you're not used to the dialect, to comprehend. I was like, wait, can you repeat that? Like it's just it can be tough, right? And I'm not, again, no disparagement at all. It's just, and that's just part of life, is being respectful to each other. So let me ask you a completely unrelated question, but somewhat related. So, as you're doing these 20, 30, whatever the range of projects, and they range in location, they range in scale, they range in what are the through lines? Like, are you doing Is there a certain type of building that you really have focused on as an organization over the last few years, that you really found your niche, that you guys feel like you're really, really flourishing in?
Personally, on my side, one of the specialties I have is high rise construction. We aren't seeing as much of that right now in the private sector, but that's all probably going to change in a few years. Hospitality has been really huge for us in the southeast. With the clients that we were working with, and it's very unique in how we tackle some of these projects. And yeah, I absolutely love it uh, to be able to do these types of projects.
I find that one of the best parts about construction is that you get exposure to so many different environments. There is no such thing as a one size fits all, which is good for, what I do as well, because we match based on backgrounds and capabilities. And so if you need a safety supervisor for, say, a data center build, be very different than a safety supervisor for a high rise residential apartment building. I mean, it's just a very different background. And so, the diversity of what you do and in what we do in support of what you do is very unique. So, going back to on the personal side a little bit, just so we can go back and forth a tad. Does your wife work outside the home? And if so, what does she do? And I imagine you travel a lot. Is she able to go with you when you travel?
I'm usually a lone traveler on the road, all week, so I'm hitting different spots. But she is a retired attorney and enjoying right now working in our koi pond. So big Christmas gift to my wife and myself was to redo our koi pond this year, and it's quite a large project. So, but we enjoy doing those types of things. And my wife, in her retirement, she surfs, she paddleboards, she does yoga, she just outdoors rides her mountain bike, and she probably puts well, she was doing a couple thousand miles a year on her mountain bike. So yeah, she's pretty active.
That is so impressive. And you've been married for 40 years. And so I know she's over 40, and I won't go any further than that. But I will say, barely, but I will say that is impressive. My neighbor had a koi pond growing up. I grew up in Southern California. I now live in Arizona, in Scottsdale, and our koi would boil in the summer. And so we don't want boiled fish. But I do love koi ponds, and I think that they're so soothing. And I would love to come visit and see it at some point. It sounds wonderful, or will be when it's redone. So I have found a through line, and I kind of wonder. You haven't said anything yet, although I think your wife may have a little bit of this in the safety community, especially in safety leadership. A surprising through line, and I'm going to ask you a question, but then I'll tell you why I'm asking. Do you have any hobbies that are outside of obviously work? And I know about building a koi pond, but is there any other hobby that you have that you enjoy? And I want to see like, what do you do in your free time?
I absolutely love to fish. Anything that's on the water, boating, swimming, surfing. I love to do that. I love spending time in the yard with my wife. We have a nice plot of land, and it just seems like it's always something to do. So that's kind of become a big hobby for us.
Very happy and proud of you for being willing to say that you have a good relationship and you enjoy hanging out with your spouse, because a lot of people don't talk about that enough, and that's a wonderful thing. The through line I was going to mention is I've had a number of safety professionals have dangerous hobbies. I've had a 55-year-old man who was a motocross guy. I had a man in his 40s, upper 40s, who was a DIY drag racer doing thousands of horsepower, going quarter mile and way too fast of a time period with parachutes to stop him. I've had experimental pilots, deep, like divers, folks who will go way, way deep, and used to be a diving instructor, and you underwater diving, welding, which anybody in safety knows that's the most dangerous job you could possibly have. And so I just laugh because a lot of my folks now you did not pass that test. You are doing relatively safe and things, which is wonderful. I'm not disparaging that at all. Although I would imagine if I was gardening with my wife, there would be moments that would be unsafe. She might be swinging something at me at times. So I won't say it's 100% safe, but maybe you might have to dodge a shovel or two.
She'll grab a chainsaw at the blink of an eye, so I have to be very careful about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and actually, it's kind of funny you should say that because and maybe I'm underestimating the risk factors of doing on your plot of land. I mean, if you're grabbing chainsaws, chainsaws are not meant to be. They're not for the faint of heart. And I love the fact that you say your wife will grab a chainsaw because sounds like she's a remarkable lady. Do you have children, by the way?
I have 2 boys. They're grown, out of the house, and doing things on their own now.
How old are your boys?
36 and 38.
Oh, wonderful. And do they have families as well? Have they started their lives?
One actually lives back in Richmond, and the other is in South Florida.
Are they married with grandkids or anything like that?
No grandchildren. One's married, and one is still on his own.
It's a wonderful life, man. You built something really remarkable. We covered a lot of subjects. Is there anything that you would like to dig into a little bit deeper on our call today that you feel would be interesting on business or personal?
I think if time allows, to reference Balfour Beatty, and they've been a very special company for me over the years, and the one thing that we're doing to give back to the industry, and then one of our beliefs is that we have a commitment to change the industry, right? And I actually believe the same thing. So we have dealt with in the business the fatal four for as long as I can remember, right? And it's never changed. And we as a company dropped by, caught in between electrical and falls. These are the 4 areas in construction where the likelihood of fatality could occur. But in our business, we believe that there's a 5th fatal risk, and it's live traffic. And whether it's around the vertical construction that we're doing, or some of the roads and bridges that we're doing, we are every day in the face of traffic. Whether we have the ability to cause issues with the traffic, if we were to drop something off the building, or we could have a vehicle come into our construction area, and it's very dangerous, and puts many people at harm. And so we believe nationally this is a topic that we need to bring up, and that we believe that the industry will follow. And that's one of our biggest initiatives right now that we're working with. And I'm very happy to be involved in something that will change the industry, because we've been fairly stagnant. Safety seems to have plateaued, and we have to have something else to grab onto. And Balfour Beatty is going to take a lead with the fatal 5 now, with live traffic. So I'm really happy that you give me the opportunity to share that.
Thank you for educating us on that. I will say I deal with a lot of insurance companies. So insurance organizations will have us do site surveys. They'll have us do training. They'll have us do loss control assessments, because we can hit 100 locations in a month, and with qualified people. And one of the programs that we are being asked to look into is actually flagging and spotting for traffic, to do training for flaggers and spotters, because it's one of those very important items. And the insurance company actually had asked us to do that after they had an unfortunate situation where a car at speed went straight into, because they didn't have an egress that was properly set up to make sure that there was an extreme turn before getting to where people are. And so somebody came in at 80 miles an hour, went right into the site on a highway. And that was a very bad situation. And I'm hearing more and more, and I think what you're doing is working. And I know you're the leader in this area, but I am hearing more and more that construction firms are being aware of distracted driving and for their staff and their suppliers and their community, but also spotting and traffic management. Because if you are holding a flag, you need to be trained on how to do it. If you're putting up barriers, you need to be trained on how to do it. And it's challenging. And you're right. It's not enough to just know. You have to be talking about it. And you're the only person on it. By the way, I've done probably 300 of these podcasts at this point. And you're maybe less, but you're the only one who's actually brought this particular subject up. And so I thank you so much. And I thank Balfour Beatty for being willing to be a leader on that subject. So I want to thank you, Chris, man. This was a great conversation. I can't wait to come visit you at some point. Maybe you can teach me how to fish in a better way. I fish a lot. I don't catch very much. So that's why it's called fishing and not catching, I'm told. I'm really, really good at fishing. I'm not very good at catching. So you'll have to teach me how to do that. And if you come out to Phoenix, maybe I can take you, if I ever finish my little Bronco project, I can take you for a ride on it. Or in it. So thank you again. And you have a wonderful week, and the best to you and your family.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.